A month passed. 30 days, 720 hours. I felt every moment. I lived every second. Every second felt as long as eternity. The bartender refilled my glass. He knew I would keep drinking. Maybe he understood everything from my face. Maybe he knows by now what men like me want. Silence and alcohol. Nothing else. I look at the glass, but don't drink. I'm thinking of that first month. The days I was a ghost hiding in Manhattan's dark corners. Those long, merciless nights when I began forgetting how to be human and learned to be a shadow. The first week was the hardest. After escaping from an abandoned place, I didn't know what to do. Obsidian Division could be watching me everywhere. Cameras on street corners, plainclothes agents, drones. Does that sound too paranoid? Yes, it does. But sometimes you have to be like that to survive. I explored the subway tunnels. There's another world beneath Manhattan. Most people don't know this. Unused lines, abandoned stations, forgotten corridors. The world of the homeless, fugitives, those who fell through the system. Dark, damp, filthy, but safe. At least safe from Obsidian. I found myself a corner, at the end of an old service tunnel, a nook where no one came. I gathered blankets from trash. I stole food from markets. I survived, but surviving is not living. In those first weeks, UMBRA started talking to me. Not with words, of course. The virus has no language, but there are urges, instincts, messages rising from the depths of my body, unable to be put into words. When I was hungry, I knew. I felt UMBRA's hunger. Normal food wasn't enough for it. It wanted protein. It wanted energy. It wanted to grow. And sometimes, passing through crowds, when I looked at people, I understood what that hunger meant. To consume. UMBRA wanted to consume people. To take their biological material, incorporate it into its own structure, become stronger. That was the prototype project anyway. To create a perfect hunting machine. A weapon that grows stronger by devouring its enemies. And I was that weapon's only successful version. Does your stomach turn when you think about this? Mine did. Every day, every hour, every minute. I was disgusted with my own body. I was afraid of my own thoughts. But I noticed something. UMBR's urges were strong, yes, but will was stronger. As long as I didn't want to, I didn't perform the act of consuming. The virus could suggest, could push, could provoke, but the final decision was mine. This discovery changed me. I didn't have to be a monster. I could choose. Every day, every moment, I could choose to remain human. And I chose. Maybe you've experienced such moments in your life too. When darkness calls to you, when darkness easily pulls you in, or when giving up seems like the easiest path, still choose to turn toward the light. Choose the difficult path. Choose to do what is right. I did this, and it was never easy. Some nights, I would lie in the corners of the tunnel I found safe. Drenched in sweat, shaking, trying to suppress UMBRA's urges. Waves of hunger came, promises of power. Just one, said the voice inside me. No one will notice. You'll be stronger. You'll protect Lily better. It was using Lily's name, using my own daughter to break me. And I refused every time. I don't know where this strength came from. Maybe fatherly instinct, maybe stubbornness, maybe just anger. I wouldn't let them turn me into a monster. I wouldn't be General Harlan's perfect weapon. I would preserve my humanity, no matter the cost. The second week, I started trying to control UMBRA. At some point in the night, I would find myself alone in abandoned subway stations. I looked at my hands. I called out to that black substance. I tried without letting go of control. The first attempts were a disaster. Umbra exploded. My whole body felt the pain. It was like that throughout the entire tunnel. I was bringing destruction everywhere I went. Then it withdrew, and I collapsed exhausted to the ground. But I didn't give up. I tried every night. I failed every night. And I learned something every night. Umbra reacted to emotion. Fear, anger, panic. These triggered the virus. Led to uncontrolled outbursts. But calmness, focus, breath control. These slowed the virus, made it directable. I learned meditation from YouTube videos. On library computers the homeless used, I researched meditation techniques for hours. It might have looked strange, a monster meditating, but it worked. By the end of the third week, I could cover part of my hand with UMBRA when I wanted, how I wanted. Only for a few seconds, but controlled. This small victory meant something big. I wasn't the virus's slave. I could work with it. I could direct it. Maybe one day I could take full control. Maybe. But in this process, I noticed something. Umbra wasn't just a parasite. It wanted to live too. To grow, to strengthen, to survive. And somehow, it understood that my survival was important for it too. Partnership. A strange, unwanted, forced partnership. But partnership nonetheless. Some nights I talked with UMBRA. That is, I listened to its urges, responded. A dialogue was taking place in my mind between me and the virus. No, we won't eat it. Yes, it's dangerous. We won't stay here. Calm down, I have the power, said the voice inside me. It sounded crazy, but it was true. Maybe I was going mad. But this dialogue calmed me down. And as I adjusted to this calmness, it allowed me to notice Elena and Lily, the good sides of myself, for the first time. I hid for a month. I strengthened for a month. I waited for a month. Now I was ready, or so I thought. I knew Obsidian Division hadn't stopped searching for me. I followed the news. Official statements still said gas leak, but between the lines were other things. Security operations, quarantine protocols, reporting suspicious persons. They were looking for me, and if they found me, they'd find my family too. This thought drove me crazy. Elena and Lily, because of me, could be in the crosshairs. Maybe their house was being watched. Maybe their phones were tapped. Maybe their every move was recorded. Going to them would have meant putting their lives in danger, but it was impossible not to see them. At the end of the first month, one night, I made up my mind to go see them, but just to see them from a distance, just in case. Only once, and only to make sure they were alive. I would eventually return to the hell I had come from. I set out with this plan, but the really shocking thing was, plans rarely go as planned, especially in my life. I found Elena's house. They lived in Brooklyn, in Park Slope, in a small apartment. A 5-story brick building, fire escapes covered in rust. A linden tree in front of the door. Finding this wasn't easy. Elena must have moved after we were thrown in. Our old address was empty. Neighbors had scattered. Families of government dissidents do this. They try not to leave traces. They try to become invisible, but I had learned to be invisible too. Library computers, old connections, street gossip. I gathered bits and pieces of information. I learned that Elena had started a new job. She was working in a cafe. She had recently started sending Lily to school. They were trying to get by on their own, without me. This thought weighed heavily on my heart, but the truth was that they were living a safer life without me. They could be normal without me. They could continue their lives without me. Still, I had to see them. Just once, from afar. That night, I climbed to the roof across from their building. Umbra made climbing easier. My fingers went between bricks. My body felt incredibly light. Within minutes, I was on the roof. I was motionless like an idol in the swamp of shadows within the darkness, waiting. It was past 8 o'clock. It was a summer day, and they were out on the street. The smell of barbecue wafted from somewhere. and it was a normal, pleasant neighborhood. It was a beautiful evening, and I noticed them. Elena turned the corner. She had grocery bags in her hands. Her hair had grown. She looked more tired than before. Her shoulders seemed collapsed, the posture of those carrying a heavy burden. And beside her, holding her hand, Lily, my daughter. My breath caught. She had grown. Even in a month, noticeably grown. Her hair had grown to her shoulders. She wore a pink dress. There were flowers on her shoes. Beautiful, so beautiful. She was holding Elena's hand and telling her something, waving her arms excitedly. Elena smiled, a tired but loving smile. And when I saw that smile, everything stopped. The world stopped. Time stopped. My heart stopped. They were there. They were alive. They were okay. They were okay without me. Those who experience such moments know the pain of watching someone you love from afar, the torture of not being able to touch, not being able to hug, not being able to say, I'm here. Tears streamed down my cheeks, silent, uncontrolled, unstoppable. Even UMBRA didn't interfere, as if it too understood the sacredness of this moment. Or maybe it was just indifferent. Viruses don't understand emotion, but I understood. And at that moment, on that roof, I made another decision. I wouldn't approach them. Not yet. Maybe never. But I would protect them. From afar, from shadows, unseen. If anything happened to them, I'd be there. But I wouldn't ruin their lives. This was the hardest promise I made to myself. The most painful part was experiencing it. After that night, my plan changed. I visited them every night. When Elena went to work, when Lily went to school or to the park, and when they ate their meals at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if it seems obsessive. It's how I clung to life. It gave me a purpose. I had a branch to hold on to, so I wouldn't get lost in the darkness. But while watching, memories came too. Fragmented, disordered, painful memories. One night, while watching Lily on the swing in the park, suddenly another scene appeared before my eyes. The same park, the same swing, but in the past. Lily was 3 years old. I was pushing the swing. Higher, Daddy, higher, she was shouting. Elena sat on the bench, looking at us and laughing. We were happy. When were we so happy? How did we lose it so easily? The memory dissolved. I returned to reality. Lily was on the swing again, but this time Elena was pushing. And when darkness fell upon the night, I was following them like a ghost on a rooftop. My memory now understood only this. Something had to trigger me. A piece of clothing, a scent, an image. And my past shone before my eyes. Sometimes a beautiful memory, sometimes savagery. Most of all, the night of my arrest. The moment the door was violently broken down. The savagery of the armed men bearing down on us. Alana's screams, Lily's sobs. They threw me to the ground, yelling, Silas Vance, you're guilty of disturbing the peace and inciting rebellion, and arrested me. Yet all we were doing was seeking the truth. We tried to expose the government's secret deals with Dominion Biotech. We said the public should know this. And for this, our lives were taken from us. Memories came like sharp knives. Days spent in the cell. Interrogations. Torture. Who's leaking information? Who are your sources? Where are the documents? I said nothing. Marcus didn't say anything either. Neither did Yara. Neither did Dimitri. We stayed loyal to each other. And the price of this loyalty was all of us becoming subjects. The Thanatos Project wasn't looking for volunteers, of course. They used criminals, with the logic of they'll die anyway, saying, at least let them contribute to science. Thousands of people, thousands of innocents, most political prisoners like us, some common criminals, all turned into subjects one by one, and all died, except me. Why me? This question still had no answer. At the end of the third week, I noticed something strange. When I looked at Elena, it was as if I saw someone else looking at her. A car parked right at the beginning of the street. 2 people were waiting inside. They were hiding themselves with their sunglasses and black suits. They waited like that for hours. These were Obsidian Division employees. My heart raced and my body began to react. They were watching Elena, and perhaps my daughter Lily too. From the very beginning, they had put men on my family's trail to find me. General Harlan was cunning. He knew I would come here one day to find my family, and he thought he would catch me. That's why I stayed away from my family. I couldn't go near them. It was too stressful. They could have hurt my family. I could have dragged them into this war. Maybe they would have kidnapped them and tortured them. Worse, they could have made them test subjects like me. I couldn't do that to them. But I didn't want to completely distance myself either. I just wanted to protect them. I had to be by their side, invisible like a ghost. And at that very moment, something happened that I never would have imagined. One night returning to my subway tunnels, I saw an old graffiti. Normally, I wouldn't notice. Manhattan is full of graffiti, but this was different. It was shaped like a bird. Wings spread, flying toward the sky. Marcus's symbol. This was our group's sign. We called it the Freedom Bird. We used it to mark our meeting points. And this mark was fresh. The paint still shone. Someone had drawn this mark recently. My heart rate accelerated. Marcus? Was he alive? Was he outside the facility? There was a small number next to the mark. 7. Number 7. The 7th meeting point. He was using our old system. The secret system we knew, others didn't. If you're questioning whether this is real, I question too. It could be a trap. Obsidian Division might have examined our old files. They might have learned our symbols. They might be using it as bait to lure me. But what if not? What if Marcus was really alive? What if he had escaped like me? This possibility ignited a fire of hope in my chest. A dangerous fire, because hope in this world could hurt you. But I still pursued it. The 7th meeting point. In northern Manhattan, in Harlem, on the roof of an abandoned apartment. We used to meet there, look at the city, make plans. In simpler times, in more hopeful times, I went there that night. Umbra was alarming. It sensed danger, but I didn't listen. I needed to know. I needed to know if Marcus was alive. When I climbed to the roof, there was nobody. Just Manhattan's lights and the silence of night. Disappointment filled me. It was empty. There was no trap, but Marcus wasn't there either. Maybe the mark was old. Maybe someone else had drawn it. Maybe I was seeing things. I was about to turn back when I saw something. In the corner of the roof, wedged between bricks, a paper. I took it, opened it. It was handwriting, familiar handwriting. Brother, if you're alive, find me. 34th Street, Water Tower. Every Friday midnight. Marcus. He was alive. He was somewhere, and he was looking for me. I squeezed the paper. My hands were trembling. I wasn't alone, and that changed everything. Waiting until Friday night was awful. 4 long days, 96 hours. Every hour felt like an eternity. I walked back and forth in the subway tunnels for hours. Sleep and food were the last things on my mind. All I could think about was Marcus. Could he really be alive? Who knows what the virus had done to him? Worst of all, could this be a trap? Umbra sensed my fears about the virus. It spread through my body in waves. Suddenly, my body reacted, and I felt black spots appearing on my skin, and I could barely control myself. When Friday came and the sun went down, I was ready to act. 34th Street was on the edge of Hell's Kitchen. Among old warehouse buildings, on the roof of an abandoned factory, was a water tower. It had been built for workers once. Now it was a rusted, forgotten relic erased from the city's memory. Just like us, there were 2 hours until midnight. I went early. If there was a trap at the end of this, I was determined not to be caught unprepared. I would check every inch of the surroundings, every single spot, the entry and exit points of the street. Umbra was a huge help in this regard. My reflexes had become highly developed. All my senses were analyzing everything in an instant and informing me, as it were. The virus had turned me into a hunting machine, but it also made me a perfect scout. I scanned around the factory. Nobody. Civilian agents, obsidian vehicles, secret surveillance points, none. Just homeless people, street cats, and the city's usual noise. Maybe it really was Marcus. Maybe he was really alive. I climbed to the roof, crouched in the shadow of the water tower, and waited. Time flows differently at such moments. You might know how minutes turn into hours when you're waiting for something important. How your heart feels like it's counting every beat. How your breathing seems loud. That's how I waited. Eyes closed, ears open. I listened to the city's sounds. Sirens in the distance. Dogs barking somewhere. Wind rattling metal structures. And then, 10 minutes before midnight, I heard a sound. Footsteps on the fire escape. Slow, careful, steps trying to hide. UMBRA reacted. Appeared on my arms, in defense position. But I held it back. Not yet. First, I had to see. I took cover in shadows. Held my breath. A figure climbed onto the roof. In the darkness, I made out his silhouette. Tall, broad-shouldered, a familiar stance. Marcus, but something was different. His walk wasn't like before. He was dragging one leg. His shoulders seemed asymmetrical, and there was something strange about his movement, choppy, trembling, as if in pain. He stopped, looked around. Silas? His voice was hoarse. Are you here? At that moment, I recognized it. Yes, it was Marcus. I knew his voice. That hoarse, deep, always reassuring voice. I emerged from the shadows. I'm here, Marcus turned. And when I saw his face, my heart shattered. The left side of his face wasn't normal. The skin swollen, discolored, veins abnormally prominent. His left eye half closed. His left arm was different too. Longer, thicker, fingers shapeless. UMBRA. He was infected too, but not like me. He was much worse. His spirit, like his body, had rejected this virus. The virus was eating him from the inside out. Suddenly, I felt so sorry for him, called out, "My God, Marcus." I approached him, and he turned toward me. And there on the roof, we held each other tightly, but his body was burning. He was sweating profusely. As we hugged, something was moving under his skin beneath that heat, but I didn't care. Just seeing my friend was enough for me. How did you manage to escape? I asked when I pulled back. Marcus, with a blank look on his face, said, I didn't escape. They threw me into a waste facility and waited for me to die. I could only react with shock, saying, what? They were waiting for me to die. I was just a failed test subject, he said. I woke up in the dump, wondering if this was real. All alone, he said. When I looked into Marcus's eyes, it was very clear he wasn't lying. I don't know. UMBRA, I guess. It wants to live too. But my DNA isn't the same as yours. The virus doesn't fully accept me. We're fighting. Every day, every hour. He looked at his left hand. His fingers moved painfully, as if they weren't obeying commands. I'm losing, brother. I know. Maybe a month, maybe 2. Then this thing will take me over completely. There was no fear in his voice. There was acceptance. And that was even more frightening. There must be a way. Maybe a treatment. A cure. Marcus shook his head. I researched that. Tried to access Dominion's secret files. I read everything I could find about Thanatos. What did you find? Marcus pulled a small USB from his pocket, held it out to me. Not much. But there's something. Yara. When I heard that name, I perked up. Dimitri had said this name when he was dying too. Is Yara alive? I don't know. But according to files, she was transferred to a different place. Not the main facility, a sub-facility. Dominion's secret laboratory in Manhattan. Dominion's secret laboratory? Inside Manhattan. Under our noses. Where is this place? Lower Manhattan. Under the financial district? In the basement floors of a skyscraper. The files don't have an exact address, but there's a marker. Voss Tower. Conrad Voss, CEO of Dominion Biotech. He was conducting secret experiments in his own skyscraper, in his own city. Should I be surprised by this man's courage or his audacity? Yara knows something, Silas. According to files, she was one of Thanatos' lead researchers. What? Yara? This was impossible. Yara was our friend, our activist. She couldn't have sold us out. It's not like that. Marcus raised his hand. She was leaking information from inside. She was working for us, but she was caught. And as punishment, she too was made a subject. This information burned my brain. Yara had worked on the Thanatos project, leaked information from inside, was caught and became a victim of the monster she created. How ironic, how tragic a fate this was. We have to find him, I said. I know. That's why I called you, Marcus said, looking me in the eye. His steady gaze was fixed on me. I can't do this alone, Silas. This body can't carry me anymore. But you're different. You're in tune with Umbra. You can do it, he told me. We'll handle this together, I said. No, he interrupted. I'm useless to you except as an unnecessary burden, but I can gather information for you, track Obsidian's movements, help you from the background, try to protect you from certain things, he said. Marcus, I called out to my friend, interrupting him. Listen to me, he said. He was using what little strength he had left. I'm dying. My body can't hold out much longer. My time is limited, and I know it. Before I die, I want to do something useful. They've killed thousands of people, and they plan to kill thousands more. Some people must do something. I looked into his eyes. I saw my determined friend. I saw anger. I saw justice. And acceptance. Okay, I said. We'll do it together. You and me. Marcus smiled. This time, it was a real smile. Like old times, huh? He said. Like old times, I said. But we both knew. Nothing would be like old times. He was dying. I was becoming a monster. And before us was one of the world's most powerful institutions. But we would still fight, because we had no other choice. We talked for hours that night. Marcus told me what he experienced at the facility. The experiments, the torture, the deaths. He'd seen Dimitri in his last days. He was completely insane. The virus had eaten his brain. He shared what he knew about Yara, what he learned while working for Dominion, that Thanatos wasn't just a soldier-making project, that it was part of a bigger plan. Control, Marcus said. That's the essence of everything. Obsidian and Dominion want to control people. UMBRA is just a tool. The real goal is to create a society that obeys, doesn't question, follows orders. With the virus? With the virus, with fear, with surveillance. Whatever works. But the virus is the most powerful weapon, because it takes you over from within. No external pressure. You obey of your own will. This thought made me shudder. I thought of UMBRA's urges. That desire to consume, that call to obey. If I lost control, would I become their puppet too? But you're different, Marcus said, as if he'd read my thoughts. You control UMBRA. You do the opposite. That's why they want you back. Not just because you're a subject. They want to copy your DNA. They want to create an army from you. Never. I know. That's why they need to stop you. Either they'll take you back or kill you. There's no third option. Zero tolerance. Either obey or perish. This was Harlan's philosophy, and Voss's too. But I had a philosophy too. Don't kneel, fight, and never give up. It was long past midnight. The sun would rise in a few hours. Marcus was tired, in terrible shape, but he didn't want to leave. One more thing, he said. Elena and Lily. My chest tightened. I was watching them. Obsidian is watching too. I know. I saw. You must stay away. If you approach, you'll make them targets too. I know that too. Marcus nodded. It's hard. I understand. But there's no other way. At least for now. For now. This word contained hope. Maybe one day. Maybe after everything is over. Maybe after we get our revenge. Maybe. Let's meet again in a week, Marcus said. By then, I'll try to gather information about Voss Tower. You keep getting stronger. Learn to control Umbra. We'll need it. Okay. Marcus stood up. He struggled, swayed for a moment. But he found his balance. Silas, he said. Yes? I said, I'm glad you're alive. Such a simple sentence. But it meant so much. Me too, I said. Me too for you. Marcus turned and melted into the night's darkness. Descended the fire escape, silently, like a shadow. And I was left alone. But I wasn't really alone anymore. I had an ally. We had a plan. We had a goal. We would find Yara. We would learn Thanatos' secrets. And then, General Harlan and Conrad Voss would pay the price for what they did. I made this promise to Marcus. I made it to Dimitri's soul. And I made it to myself. Shadows never forget. After that night, everything felt different. Loneliness was still there. Darkness was still there. But inside it, a spark had appeared. Small, trembling, but a real spark. Hope is a dangerous thing. I knew this. Hope can blind you. Hope can push you to stupidity. Hope can kill you. But hopelessness kills too. Slowly, silently, without you noticing. And I was no longer hopeless. When I returned to the subway tunnels, the sun was rising. Manhattan was waking up. Millions of people were starting a new day. They'd go to work, drop their kids at school, drink their coffee. They'd continue their normal lives. My normal life was now these tunnels, but I had a purpose. I crouched in my corner, pulled my blanket over me, but I didn't sleep. I took out the USB Marcus had given me, held it in my hand. It was a tiny thing, a few grams of plastic and metal. But inside were perhaps information that could change everything. Yara, our friend, our ally, and now, as I learned, our hero fighting from inside. I thought I knew her. Intelligent, analytical, always chasing documents. But turns out she was much more. She infiltrated Dominion. She learned Thanatos, and she tried to transfer it to us. She was caught, and her punishment was being thrown into the hell she created. This thought burned me inside. Was Yara now like Marcus? Was her body collapsing? Was she fighting the virus? Or had something worse happened? I didn't know, and not knowing was torture. But I would find out. I would go to Voss Tower. I would find that secret laboratory, and I would get Yara out of there. Or at least I would learn what happened to her, what she knew, what she left us. Granada's secrets were in that woman's brain, and those secrets could be the key to bringing down Harlan and Voss. I closed my eyes. UMBRA moved inside me, silent, calm, waiting, as if it too understood the new situation. We weren't just surviving anymore. Now we had a plan. We were in a war, and wars are fought to be won. I slept for a few hours. Nightmares didn't come that night. Maybe UMBRA blocked them. Or maybe it was just from exhaustion. But I slept peacefully for the first time. When I woke up, it was noon. I got up, washed my face in the subway station's old bathroom, looked in the mirror. I was changing. The dark circles under my eyes had lightened. My cheekbones were still sharp, but color had come to my face. Umbra was rebuilding me. Stronger, more resilient, more dangerous. But was I still me? I asked myself this question every day. With every look in the mirror, every look at my hands. Was Silas Vance still here? Or had only a shell remained? A shell filled with virus? I didn't know the answer. Maybe I never would. But for today, it didn't matter. Today, I had things to do. I went to the library. The public library where the homeless took refuge, protected from heat and cold. I sat at a computer, plugged in the USB. Files opened. Most were encrypted. I couldn't crack them. If Dmitri were here, he'd open them in seconds, but Dmitri was gone. And I didn't understand technology. But some files were open. Reports, dates, names. The Thanatos project had started in 2019 as a joint venture of Obsidian, Division, and Dominion Biotech. Official purpose: enhanced human capacity research. Real purpose: to develop biological weapons. Thousands of subjects had been used. From prisons, mental hospitals, homeless shelters. People no one would search for. Lives no one would care about. And all had died. Except one. My name was in the files. Subject 47. Silas Vance. DNA compatibility rate. 97.3%. 97.3%. Why was this number important? The files didn't explain, but I could guess. Umbra needed a specific genetic structure, and my structure, with a 1 in a million chance, met those criteria. Was I lucky? Unlucky? Both. Among the files I saw another name. Dr. Yara Osman, lead researcher, status, subject, transfer, Voss Tower sub-facility. Yara really was there. In Dominion's heart, under Conrad Voss's skyscraper, and it said, status, subject. They had infected her too. This information hit me in the stomach. Yara, that brilliant fighting woman, might now be turning into a monster like us. Or worse, I had to save her. I closed the computer, took the USB, left the library. Manhattan greeted me. Noisy, crowded, indifferent. Millions of people passed by each other, and no one saw anyone. Everyone in their own world, in their own troubles. This city made me invisible, and invisibility was my greatest weapon. That afternoon, I made a decision. I would see Elena and Lily one last time. Not last maybe, but last for a long time. Because from now on, I would focus on Voss Tower, focus on finding Yara. And during this process, I couldn't approach my family. Obsidian was still watching them. I knew this. Every approach would increase the risk, and I couldn't put them at risk. In the late afternoon, I went to Brooklyn. I found the park where Lily played. I bought a coffee on the opposite street, sat on a bench, and waited. Around 5 they came. Elena in work clothes, with tired steps. 101 Lily beside her jumping, joyfully. Preschool must have ended. Maybe she was telling something. Maybe she'd made a drawing. Maybe she'd made a new friend. I didn't know. And this not knowing was the most painful feeling in the world. If you have a child, you understand what it means to miss those little moments. The first tooth falling out, the first bike ride, the first school day, I was missing all of them. And maybe I would miss all of them. Lily ran to the swing. Elena walked after her, sat on the bench, took out her phone, looked at the screen tiredly, and Lily started swinging. Her little legs went back and forth. Her hair flew in the wind, and she was laughing. That innocent, pure, trusting the world laugh. "Daddy, higher!" This voice echoed in my memory, an echo from the past. Once I would push that swing. Once I would hear that laugh. Now I could only watch. My eyes filled, but I didn't cry. Here, in this park, in the open air, I couldn't cry. I'd attract attention, and attracting attention meant death. I sipped my coffee. My hands were shaking, but I controlled them. Umbra stirred inside me, as if trying to console, or maybe just trying to balance the emotional wave. I didn't know if the virus could empathize. Probably it couldn't. But at that moment, that stirring was strangely comforting. I sat there for an hour. Lily played. Elena watched. The sun set. Lights came on. And then they got up to go home. Elena held Lily's hand. Lily said something. Elena smiled. A normal family moment. Without me. I watched them walk away. Watched until they turned the corner. Until they became invisible. And then I got up. This won't be the last, I said inside. I promise. One day I'll return. One day I'll knock on your door. One day I'll hug Lily. But not today. Today I had another enemy to fight. Someone else to save. And revenge to take. I would find Yara. I would learn Thanatos' secrets. And then Harlan and Voss would understand what a shadow from hell meant. I left the park. Night had fallen. Manhattan lit up with lights. And I disappeared among those lights. A shadow. A ghost. A father. And soon, very soon, a destruction. Because shadows don't forgive. They just wait. And when their time comes, they emerge from within darkness. Silently. Mercilessly. And irreversibly.